In this video, we're going to respond to number one question most diabetics are asking. How to bring blood sugars down fast and safely, and how to effectively control the blood glucose so it always stays in the optimal range. I think I know a thing or two about this topic because I lived with diabetes for 35 years. I was struggling with managing my blood sugars. My HbA1c test results, which basically show what my blood sugars had been for the last 3 months, were as high as 13.3%, meaning my average blood sugars were around 350 milligrams per deciliter at that time. That's scary high. But for the past few years I have consistently achieved HbA1c of 6%, meaning my average blood sugars now are a little bit over 110 milligrams per deciliter. And that's exactly what I want them to be. I'm a type 1 diabetic, but this video is not only for type 1s, it is also for type 2s, type 1.5s, and pre-diabetics. I'm basically gonna share all the tips and hacks I know, how to get rid of high blood sugars in the morning, at night, and after meals, which is the most usual time when blood sugars of most diabetics spike. So let's get right into it and start with the morning blood sugars. High morning blood sugars can be caused by many different factors. Maybe you had a late night meal full of carbohydrates the night before, or it might be caused by so-called dawn effect, which is related to certain processes that happen in our body before and shortly after we wake up, like spike of cortisol, adrenaline, and liver activity. If you are a type 1 diabetic, your morning blood sugar is probably high due to one simple reason. Your body doesn't produce the insulin hormone. If you are a type 2 diabetic, your body does produce insulin, but it is not able to use the insulin effectively. And if you are a pre-diabetic, you might have high insulin resistance. Your high morning blood sugar can be caused by a combination of these factors. It's probably not just one of them. And if you have any kind of diabetes and your morning blood sugar is high, you probably are not managing your condition as well as you could. Now, some of us struggle with high blood glucose levels immediately after we wake up. And some of us might see the blood sugar spiking during the first few hours after we wake up. Everyone is different and there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but I want to share with you a few tips that worked for me and helped me get up with perfect morning blood sugars almost every day. These might be good inspiration regardless of what type of diabetes you have. Tip number one is exercise. Try to get your heart rate up and do some kind of physical activity for at least 30 minutes every day. And what I'm talking about here is not a walk. In my case, I really need to get that sweat going to see a positive impact on my blood sugar levels overnight and early in the morning. High intensity exercise or interval training is perfect for this. And exercise not only has tremendous effect on insulin sensitivity, it will also reduce that excessive fat. It's perfectly natural and very healthy. You cannot go wrong with this one. Tip number two, reduce the number of carbohydrates you eat the night before. This one is easier said than done, but trust me, this is one of the most important things on the list, at least for me. I know that when I don't eat carbohydrates after 7 p.m., I will be going to bed around 10-11 p.m. with good stable blood sugars. And this gives me a good basis for staying in the ideal blood sugar range over the night and early in the morning. I also try to eat foods that are generally lower in carbs for dinner as part of the process of getting ready for a good night, both blood sugar and sleep wise. Tip number three, get a couple of alcoholic drinks before you go to bed. Just kidding, just kidding. Now this one is super interesting because I heard from so many people that drinking a glass or 2 glasses of wine in the evening gets them perfect blood sugars in the morning. It's been the case for me as well. Now again, I'm not a doctor, but I think the main reason for the drop in blood sugar levels during the night after drinking happens because the alcohol reduces the liver activity from raising the blood glucose. And this is something you really need to watch out for, especially if you are an insulin-dependent diabetic. Your glucose will most likely go up after consuming a few alcoholic beverages, and it's really easy to confuse the signs of being drunk with the signs of hypoglycemia. So watch out for that one. And don't drink too much alcohol as an excuse to achieve perfect morning blood sugars. It's really not needed. Tip number four is intermittent fasting. And this is a very popular way of burning fat and increasing insulin sensitivity. When you do intermittent fasting, you basically break your day into 2 parts. One during which you eat and one during which you fast. And since we already said we don't want to eat carbs late in the evening, we can probably try to have dinner at 6 p.m. let's say, and try to fast until 7 a.m. This is 13 hours. And this is exactly how I started intermittent fasting. And this was my first day with intermittent fasting. Just 13 hours, nothing crazy, from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I kept extending the window to 15 hours and 18 hours, which is the maximum I did so far. I never went over those 18 hours. And I don't do this at all every day. I switch between periods when I do fast and periods when I don't fast. But the intermittent fasting really gave me great morning blood sugars. If you haven't tried intermittent fasting yet and want to give it a shot, please do your research before you start and don't go too crazy right from the beginning. Take it step by step. By the way, hit that like button if you already tried intermittent fasting and let me know what you thought about it. My huge inspiration in the intermittent fasting area is Dennis Pollock, aka Beat Diabetes, who regularly goes on a 36-hour fast, and he shares his experience on his channel. By the way, I did an interview with Dennis on my channel, and I will link it here and in the description below if you want to check it out. Tip number 5 on how to avoid high blood sugars in the morning is break your fast or start your day with a big glass of water. Guys, so far we talked about all the things you can do to not wake up with high blood glucose. But what if you wake up and your blood sugar is high anyway, regardless of all the previous efforts you put in? No worry, I have a solution for that too. Check this out. I discovered a few very effective methods that helped me get my blood sugar down fast. And I captured 3 days when my morning blood sugar was a bit too high on camera, so that you can see what exactly I did on each of those days to lower my blood sugar. Day 1, 6 o'clock. My blood sugars have been creeping up a bit, and I'm gonna try to bring them down by doing a 30-minute walk. And I'm gonna check in with you every 15 minutes so that you can see real time how my blood sugars are moving. Let's go. 6:15. I've been walking for 15 minutes and I just show you what my blood sugar is. So it's actually going a bit up. I will check again in another 15 minutes because I think it will now start going down. Remember, there is a bit of delay because I'm using a CG and there's a bit of delay between the blood sugar and the sensor glucose that the Dexcom sensor is giving me. Finished the 30-minute walk and my blood sugar is actually at the same exact level that it was before I started. But I'm gonna stop now and I'm gonna check in with you again in 15 minutes because remember I mentioned there is a bit of a delay and I already noticed there is a trend reversal. So from going up, the blood sugar started coming down. Guys, keep watching because you will see the blood sugar going down even further in the next 30 minutes, although I won't be walking anymore. So I've been just chilling here for the past 15 minutes and I'm now a bit lower than I started. You see the blood sugar keeps coming down, 6.7 millimole. To be honest, I expected a little bit more. 7 o'clock, I'm at 6.3 millimole. If you ask me, that's a pretty damn good fasting blood sugar, at least for a type 1 diabetic. I'm happy with that. And I'm gonna have breakfast now. I was a bit disappointed on day 1 because I typically see much bigger reduction in my blood sugar from a half an hour walk. But check out what happened on day 2 and day 3. And even if you don't feel like getting off your sofa, watch all the way to the end because not all 3 methods I will be showing you today require some physical activity. Day 2, 6 o'clock. I'm starting again at 7.5 millimole and I'm gonna do a short jog, a light run for 30 minutes to see if I will be able to bring my blood sugar down and by how much. Let's go. 15 minutes into the run, I already get some sweat going. My blood sugar started dropping. It's at 7.3 right now. And I think as I continue running, it will continue to go down. 6:30 a.m. I finished my run. I'm down to 6.6 millimole and look how beautiful it is here. And I check again in 15 and 30 minutes to see if the blood sugar keeps coming down because I know it will. And I want to see what the impact after 60 minutes is. Finished my run 15 minutes ago and I'm at beautiful 5.5 millimole, 100. That's a unicorn. 7 o'clock. Fasting blood sugar 4.8, perfect. This is like a non-diabetic. So you see the light jog in the morning really did it and got my blood sugar down. I'm very happy and I'm gonna eat my breakfast now. So what actually happened on day 2? Well, similar to day 1, I did an aerobic physical activity. I was able to bring my heart rate up just enough to reduce my blood sugar levels. And from my experience, there are many other aerobic activities I can do to reduce my blood sugar. Some examples are biking, swimming, or inline skating. I just need to be careful and not go too fast, because if my heart rate goes above 160, I might turn that aerobic activity to a non-aerobic activity. That would actually increase my blood sugar. Now, 160 is no magic number. This is something that works for me, and for you it might be completely different. So give it a try and see if doing some aerobic activity will actually decrease your blood sugar. Now, before we get to day 3, what is your favorite way to bring blood sugar down fast? Let me know in the comments. Day 3, 6:45 a.m. My blood sugar is 7.3 millimole, and I'm gonna try to bring it down by taking some rapid-acting insulin. My insulin correction ratio is about 3.5 millimole per 1 unit of insulin. So because I'm trying to get to around 4.5 millimole as the ideal fasting blood sugar, I'm gonna take 0.8 units of insulin, and I'm gonna check in with you again in 30 minutes when the rapid-acting insulin is supposed to start working. Guys, while we wait for the insulin to start working, I just want to mention that on the 3 days when I did this experiment, I didn't eat anything before or during the experiment. And I had no insulin or other medication on board except for my basal insulin, of which I took the exact same amount on each of those 3 days at the exact same time, to make sure that this is an apple-to-apple comparison. 7:15 a.m., 30 minutes after I took the insulin. Right now I'm at 6.7 millimole, so it's a slight drop from 7.3 where I started. We should see more significant impact of the insulin at 7:45 a.m. It's 7:45 a.m., 60 minutes after I took my rapid-acting insulin. And you see my blood sugar went down to 5.2 millimole from 7.3, so that's quite a drop. 5.2, I think, is perfect fasting blood sugar. I'm gonna have breakfast now. Guys, in a second I'm gonna show you a nice overview of how these 3 days compared and which of these 3 methods was the most effective in bringing my blood sugar down fast, whether it was the walk, the run, or the insulin. But before I do that, I want to recognize that with diabetes, every day might be different. There are thousands of other things that can impact my blood sugar, including how I slept, what climate I'm in, whether I'm stressed, and many others. And mornings and afternoons are different too. My insulin sensitivity is pretty bad in the morning. So if I did this very experiment in the afternoon, my blood sugar would go down even more from the very same activities. And one thing I want to stress out, and I want you to keep in mind, is that when it comes to reducing blood sugar, it is very important to do it safely and not only quickly. Especially if you decide to experiment like I did and try some new physical activities or giving yourself extra insulin. Your body might react completely different from mine, and you don't want to overdo it and bring yourself to severe hypoglycemia. And if you do any kind of physical activity, please always keep a juice box or glucose tablets on you, just in case something goes wrong and you need those quick carbohydrates. If you take additional insulin, make sure you know your correction ratio. In other words, how much 1 unit of insulin will reduce your blood sugar level. You also need to know how fast your insulin starts working and for how long it lasts. If you don't know any of these things, you should definitely talk to your doctor first, because it is his or her job to explain to you how these things work and what are the best methods to reduce your blood sugar. You can see that in my experiment, the 30-minute run was the most effective and reduced the blood sugar the fastest, and this is what I typically see in my case. Now, in my opinion, this goes to show that it is not always necessary to put additional medication to your body when your blood sugar is high. I know that in my situation, doing a little bit of light physical activity can do even better and faster job than insulin. So now that we covered what to do to achieve perfect fasting blood sugars, we need to look at another problem many diabetics have. And the problem is that their blood sugars start creeping up after they eat breakfast or even after they drink coffee in the morning. We need to be aware what we eat and drink and how that impacts our blood sugars. And I will share my favorite approaches a little bit later in this video, but I just want to give you a few breakfast tips for now. You can go for low carb, things like eggs, avocado salad, protein bread, smoked salmon, Greek yogurt, things like that. Or even for more carby options without added sugar, unsweetened oatmeal, fruits with low glycemic index, like berries for example. You can also go and throw in some green veggies or legumes. Both work really well for me. But be aware of standard breakfast options that can skyrocket your blood sugars, like orange juice, pancakes, sweetened cereal, sweet pastry. Now I totally understand if you prefer some of those standard breakfast items, and I don't blame you. And I honestly think there are some workarounds how you can still eat those and keep your morning blood sugars in the normal range, especially if you are an insulin-dependent diabetic. The things I would do if I was forced to eat these standard breakfast items is I would probably take a light jog before breakfast, and I would take my fast-acting insulin well in advance of breakfast. Tip number 6 is nailing down your insulin dose. It is key to fight both high fasting blood sugars and high blood sugars after breakfast. In my case, for example, I know that I simply need more medication, aka insulin, between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. But you don't necessarily need an insulin pump to get rid of your high morning blood sugars. If you are on multiple daily injections, it is key to understand what insulin you are taking and when that insulin is most effective in your body. When does it have its peak and how long does it last? If your long-lasting insulin has a peak effect after 8 hours and you are least insulin sensitive in the morning, you might want to take that long-term insulin shot before you go to bed, because in 8 hours it will be the strongest and it will help fight those high morning blood sugars. And obviously you need to talk about this with your medical professional and consult with them what is the best time for you to take that long-lasting insulin. Post-meal blood sugar spikes are another major problem for many diabetics. So now I want to cover some tips how to get rid of those. My first tip is simple. If you want to get rid of blood sugar spikes after meal, then stop eating foods with added sugars and consume less carbohydrates with your meals. Whenever you eat carbs, your body converts them into glucose and your blood sugar goes up. It's that simple. From my experience, meals rich in carbs and meals with added sugar are the #1 reason why I see those blood sugar spikes after meal. Here is what added sugars can do with your blood glucose line. See the massive spike? And here is what a meal rich in carbs can do. A little bit less steep, but still a spike. And it sounds crazy to me that according to a recent study, the average American adult gets 22% of calories from added sugars. And I know many people who switched from the standard American diet to a low-carb diet or eliminated carbs completely and switched to a ketogenic diet. Their blood sugars improved dramatically. Some of them get a straight blood glucose line just like this since they made the change. The biggest and most inspiring proponent of a low-carb diet that I know is Dr. Bernstein, a type 1 diabetic diagnosed at the age of 12 who at his 87 years of age is still staying healthy, still working at his diabetes clinic and living a full life with this chronic condition. Dr. Bernstein recommends the low-carb diet to type 2 diabetics as well, and he claims that you can reverse type 2 diabetes using this approach. He suggests eating no more than 30 net grams of carbs per day, 6 grams for breakfast, 12 grams for lunch and 12 grams for dinner. And here is a list of foods that are allowed and not allowed, which can really help you prepare your meal if you want to follow his approach. The main argument for the low-carb diet is that when you eat carbs, they simply spike your blood sugar much faster than fat and protein. Cutting carbs solves that problem. When you eat low-carb, you don't get more than 10% of your calorie intake from carbohydrates. And that's why it immediately gets much easier to keep those blood sugars under control. After a few days of low-carb diet, your body gets into ketosis and it starts burning fat because it simply doesn't get enough energy from carbs. And so you should also start losing weight pretty quickly on a low-carb diet, as long as you don't overeat. Most people on a low-carb diet are able to eliminate blood sugar spikes completely and significantly reduce their HbA1c very fast. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. Eating low-carb is not easy, and keto is even more extreme, but I'm not as strict as Dr. Bernstein. I like to splurge a bit from time to time. And in my opinion, with the technology we have today, we can afford to eat carbs more often than Dr. Bernstein could when he got his first glucometer. So my second tip is, when you do eat carbohydrates, choose the right kind of carbs. The trick is to look at the glycemic index, or GI. GI is a number from 0 to 100 that is assigned to each food, and it represents the relative rise in the blood sugar level 2
hours after consuming that food. The higher the GI number is, the faster your blood sugar spikes. So I always try to pick foods with lower GI whenever possible. And here is an overview for you to give you an idea about the glycemic index of foods you probably eat quite often. The green ones are the good ones and the red ones are the bad ones. You can see that legumes like kidney beans or lentils and green vegetables like zucchini or broccoli, although they still have carbs, they are doing much better than things like white rice, white bread or potatoes.
So that was the low carb approach. But when it comes to diabetes diet, there is not only one approach that works for everyone. Everyone is a little bit different. And there's actually one more approach that works pretty well for me, and I'm gonna cover it right now. And it's gonna get a bit more complicated because the second approach is almost like an exact opposite of a low carb diet.
What?
It is the low fat, whole foods, plant-based approach, which by nature is quite high in carbs, and specifically carbs in their natural form. Let me tell you more about that.
The main argument for the low-fat, plant-based diet is not the immediately better and more stable blood sugars. It's all about insulin resistance. Because the more fat your body accumulates in your body cells, the more insulin resistant you are. Your body just can't use insulin effectively to lower your blood sugars, because it's clogged with all that fat in your cells. That's why low-fat, plant-based diet promotes eating whole foods with higher carbohydrates content and low-fat content. With a plant-based diet, you should also see significant weight loss, especially when you combine it with exercise. And you should achieve better HbA1c levels as your insulin sensitivity improves. The second argument for low-fat, plant-based diet is that people who follow it report better energy levels compared to the periods of time when they were on a low-carb diet. And the third argument is that the low-fat, plant-based diet is more sustainable in the long term. Your bad cholesterol levels should significantly improve on a plant-based diet. And to be honest with you, it's very challenging to follow a low-carb diet in the long term. I simply start craving things like bread, potatoes and rice after some time in a low-carb state.
It seems that low-carb diet works for some diabetics and low-fat, plant-based diet based on whole foods works for other diabetics. And that's totally fine, everyone is different, as I already said in this video. But diet is not the only way to bring your blood sugars down, so keep watching because I'll be sharing some more strategies in this video. I don't want to get too deep on the diet topic and tell you which one I think is the best, because I'm working on another exciting video where I'll be sharing a very long experiment I've done. If you don't want to miss it, then make sure to subscribe and hit that bell button so that you get a notification whenever I release a new video. And while you're at it, if you're getting value of this video, please hit that like button to help this video reach more people.
Another thing that works really well for me is incorporating foods with high fiber content into my meal plan. Dietary fiber helps lessen the spike in my blood sugars after eating because it slows down digestion. It also makes the whole digestion process more efficient, and it can help you feel full sooner. And if you count carbs like me, you should definitely talk to your doctor to see how to account for fiber in your meal. What I usually do is I deduct the fiber content from my carb count to get to the net carbs number in my meal. Now, all the things I covered so far are related to diet and what you can eat to avoid those high blood sugar spikes. But what if you want to throw a cheat day from time to time and go to a Chinese restaurant and get a really unhealthy food loaded with carbs? By the way, I do that too from time to time, and here is a very easy and effective tip that allows me to do that. Whenever I eat a really carby meal, I try to take a walk right after I leave the restaurant. Sometimes I do a half an hour walk, sometimes an hour, and sometimes even more, and it really works wonders. If you do that, I guarantee you that your blood sugar spike will be much smaller. It is really effective, really healthy, perfectly natural, and very cheap. Unlike any other diabetes medication, walking is free. And just like any other physical activity, it can also improve your insulin sensitivity. Now, speaking of diabetes medication, all people with with type 1 diabetes like me need insulin to survive. The tips I described so far can help us reduce the amount of insulin we need to take, but we cannot eliminate it completely because our bodies don't produce insulin at all. We still need to take it. The next series of tips on how to avoid those blood sugar spikes are for those who use insulin. Guys, you absolutely need to count or at least estimate carbs in each meal that you eat. And you should be using your specific insulin to carb ratio that your doctor should provide you with to calculate how much insulin you should take with that meal. But even if you do calculate your insulin dosage correctly, your blood sugars might still spike. Why? Well, because the meal may rise blood sugar faster than the insulin starts working and prompts cells to absorb that sugar for energy or storage. And there are two ways you can avoid this. The first one is taking your insulin earlier, aka pre-bolusing. And the second one is getting a faster insulin. Yes, you heard me right, a faster insulin. But let's talk about taking the insulin earlier first. How much earlier should you take it? Well, this might be different for everyone, and it also depends a bit on what kind of meal you are eating, but the rule of thumb that worked for me with rapid-acting insulin was 15 minutes. I know that when I take rapid-acting insulin, wait 15 minutes, and then eat my lunch, my blood sugar spike will be very small. But I can tell you this is very difficult in real life. Inject the insulin, wait exactly 15 minutes, and exactly 15 minutes later start eating. Sometimes I didn't wait because I didn't have enough time and my blood sugar spiked, or I waited too long and my blood sugar dropped before I started eating. It just never worked 100%. But then my doctor suggested I could try a faster acting insulin, and it proved to be exactly what I needed. I switched from Humalog, which is already a rapid-acting insulin, to Lyumjev, which is even faster. With the new insulin, I don't need to pre-bolus anymore. I just take my insulin and I eat right away, and my blood sugar just doesn't spike. Sometimes when I eat meals with lower glycemic profiles, I even need to use the extended bolus function on my insulin pump. That's how fast the insulin is. Lyumjev, however weird the name may sound to you, proved to be a great option for my automated insulin delivery function on my insulin pump as well, because it can react much faster when my CGM starts indicating that my blood sugar is rising or dropping. By the way, CGM is another great tool that you absolutely need to get rid of your blood sugar spikes after meal. But if you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know that. Now please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should now run and change your medication. I'm just saying what worked for me. You should definitely talk to your doctor first before you make any changes to your treatment, not listen to some random YouTuber.
Guys, if you managed to watch all the way here, I want to give you a little surprise. I want to give you something extra. My favorite hacks. Check this out.
Here are 7 simple hacks to keep your blood sugars low for the years to come. And don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about checking your blood sugars regularly and wearing a continuous glucose monitor, because you already know that, right? We're gonna take it to the next level today. Let's go. Favorite hack number 7. Add more fiber to your meals. If you eat salad, add some nuts or seeds. If you eat cereal or drink a smoothie in the morning, add a tablespoon of chia seeds or flax seeds. These are excellent sources of fiber. They will smooth out your digestion and smooth out that blood sugar spike after any meal. Other excellent sources of fiber are berries, vegetables or legumes. So always have some seeds handy and a pack of frozen berries in the freezer. My favorite hack number 6. Healthy snacking. You see, most traditional snacks are unhealthy. They usually bring your blood sugars very high very quickly and keep it high for a long time because of all those processed sugars and processed fats in those unhealthy snacks. Sometimes it's really hard to avoid snacking, I get that. But here are some more blood sugar friendly options for you. Switch from potato chips to popcorn. Popcorn not only has fiber, but it has less calories. You can eat 6 cups of popcorn to get the same amount of calories as from 1 cup of potato chips. Another one, switch from any kind of salted and roasted nuts to a natural version. The natural unsalted version will not have any of those nasty processed fats and a lot less sodium. You might also consider pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds instead. They taste amazing. And another one for sweet lovers. Try a smoothie with berries, banana,
oats, chia seeds, and coconut milk. It's sweet, delicious, and surprisingly blood sugar friendly compared to any smoothie you can get in a store or restaurant. Now I hope my next 2 tips will blow your mind, because they are amazing and almost nobody does this. And even for me, it took me 30 years living with type 1 diabetes to realize that I can eat meals full of carbs and don't get that blood sugar spike. I had no idea this was possible, but not so long ago I started doing these 2 or 3 things and they really work. Did you know that if you have a plate with a meal in front of you, your blood sugars will react differently depending on the order of the individual components of the meal in which you eat them? Let's take an example meal of rice, beans, piece of fish, and salad. If you start with rice, your blood sugars will explode, especially if it is white rice, which is processed. But if you eat your salad first and then your meat, then your beans, and leave the rice at the end, your blood sugar spike will not be so fast. When you eat carbs after fiber, fat, and protein, the digestion of carbs and the rise in glucose is much more gentle, making energy from the carbs last longer. And by the way, if you take insulin with your meal, make sure you take the right dose depending on the amount of carbs in that meal. But what is also important to take the right dose at the right time. Sometimes it's necessary to take the insulin up to 15 to 30 minutes before the meal. Otherwise, your blood sugar will spike too high before that insulin starts working. That was number 5. Moving on to my favorite hack number 4. See, the main reason why your blood sugars are high is probably your insulin sensitivity. Even if you're type 1 diabetic, you might be insulin resistant. But you can reverse that insulin resistance if you start eating the right foods. Try to eat primarily whole foods and completely eliminate processed foods from your diet. That, my friends, is the key to stable blood sugars. I mean, this is not really a hack, it's a common knowledge, but I was shocked how much impact it had when I started doing it consistently. It was huge for me. In the initial phase, I completely stopped eating any highly processed or packaged foods. All those pre-made meals that you just throw in the microwave. All those crackers, chips, all the pasta, noodles, white rice, white bread, things like that. And I started to do a lot more home cooking, eating a lot more nuts and seeds, unprocessed grains, legumes, fruits. Yes, I said fruits and vegetables. And if you want to take to the next level, which is what I'm doing right now, try to eliminate saturated fats and animal products completely. I'm actually in the middle of a 90-day plant-based whole foods challenge and I'm loving it so far. And as part of that diet, I eat a lot of carbohydrates. Now I already see all the proponents of the low carb diet and followers of Dr. Bernstein hitting the keyboard and commenting that low carb diet is the best for diabetics. I'm a big fan of Dr. Bernstein and I've been following his recommended diet for the longest time. I've been eating low carb for the longest time. But it's not what I'm doing right now with the plant-based whole foods high carb approach. But guys, before you put any nasty comments in the comment section, try what I'm doing right now for 3 weeks and see if that works for you or not. And if it doesn't work, even if it does work, comment below and let me know how it was. You might be surprised, by the way. I was definitely surprised. Now, one word of warning if you use insulin or any other diabetes medication. When you start a whole foods diet, especially if you eliminate animal products and fats from your diet, your insulin needs might go down significantly. So be careful when you do something like that and always work with a specialist to give you some guidance, just to make sure you don't get into any dangerous low blood sugars. First 5 hacks I gave you, that was just a warm-up. But now we're getting into top 2. And this is the stuff that might push the envelope for you. You see, most people are trying to lower blood sugars because their doctor or their family told them. And they fail. And I think it's because your motivation can never be so strong if you're doing this for someone else. So my favorite hack number 2 to win the game with diabetes is to find out the real reason why you want to master your blood sugars. What will you get out of it? Not what someone else will get. What will you get? Be selfish.
This should be about you. Do you want to improve energy levels and feel better, stronger, faster? Great. Do you want to be able to spend more quality time with your children and grandchildren when they grow up? Excellent! These are examples of really good long-term goals that will drive you for a long time, not only after your next HbA1c test and after your next doctor's appointment. Now, your long-term goals will probably be different because we are all different. But try to find something that really excites you, because then you will have a very good reason to go after it. Now, speaking of goals, my number one favorite hack of all times when it comes to managing diabetes and lowering blood sugars is write everything down. Write out the reasons why you want to achieve something and how you will get there, what you will do day by day. And sit down on a weekly basis, evaluate how you are doing, what is going well and what you should continue doing, and what is not going so well and what you should adjust. Now, to be able to evaluate how you are doing, you need to track some things. So here are the things that I track daily: my blood sugar readings, my blood pressure, insulin and any other medication that I take, all my meals, all my water intake, and any kind of physical activity. I also track my blood work that is done quarterly, and especially I look at my HbA1c.
Guys, we're gonna get to the most important part of this video right here in a minute, but if you feel committed and you wanna set your goals right now for the upcoming week, feel free to pause this video and get back to it whenever you're done with your goal setting. And if you need help setting those goals, or if you just want to talk them through with me, there are two ways that you can reach me. The first one is a private diabetes coaching session where we work one-on-one and where we can go very deep. You can basically have my diabetes brain picked up just for yourself for as much time as you need. The second one, which is more affordable, is my Patreon group, where you can message me directly anytime and I usually respond within a few hours. And you also get access to my bonus content. You can try my Patreon completely for free until the end of the month and see if you like it or not. Links to both diabetes coaching and my Patreon group are in the show notes, so check them out. Now let's get back to probably the most important point of this video, and that is how to achieve perfect blood sugars at night when you sleep.
Keeping your nighttime blood glucose in the optimal range is one of the most important things for every diabetic or pre-diabetic, because if your blood sugar drops too low, it might cause serious damage. You might even die. And I'm not kidding. But if your nighttime blood sugars are constantly high, your HbA1c will spike to the moon. Keep in mind that the HbA1c test draws a picture of your average blood sugars for the past 3 months. 1/3 of your A1c test results depends on your nighttime blood glucose. As you can see in this graph, if you are in the 200s every night, your HbA1c result will probably be around 9%. Studies show that even HbA1c above 7% leads to eye damage, nerve damage, food problems, cardiovascular disease, and many more. I don't want to scare you, I just want you to really understand that keeping your blood sugar at night in the ideal range is equally important as getting good night's sleep. Actually, it's not even possible to get a good night's sleep if your blood sugars are too high, because you will probably need to go to the bathroom very often, and you will feel like crap in the morning. We all know that feeling when we wake up with high blood sugars. It's not nice. But it wouldn't be me if I didn't have some tips for you. Tip 1. Before you even start doing anything to improve your nighttime blood sugars, find out what exactly your blood glucose is doing at night. Maybe you already go to bed with high blood sugar and the blood sugars stay high all night. Maybe you go to bed with normal blood sugar and the blood sugar starts spiking during the night. Does it start creeping up in the early morning just before you wake up? Or maybe the problem is the exact opposite. Maybe you go too low during the night and your blood sugar only spikes as your body fights the nighttime hypoglycemia. The best way to find out your blood glucose trends during the night is to wear a continuous glucose monitor, like the Freestyle Libre, like the Dexcom. They capture the trends of your nighttime glucose and you can look at the graph to easily see where the problem is. If you don't have a continuous glucose monitor, then you will need to prick your finger multiple times during the night, ideally at least every 2 hours, and note down the numbers. What I would do is I would capture the numbers for at least a week or even 2 weeks in a journal. And in that journal, I would also note what I ate for dinner on each day and if I had any physical activity during the day. Once I've collected all the information, I would try to find out any patterns or any repetitive trends.
friends. You need to identify what the problem is and give it a name. My blood glucose rises by approximately 60 milligrams per deciliter almost every night between midnight and 2 a.m. after I eat pizza for dinner. Or my nighttime blood glucose is constantly too high, around 200 milligrams per deciliter on days when I don't do any physical activity. Only after I identified the problem and gave it a name, I would move on and come up with the plan on how to fix it. Tip 2 for improving those nighttime blood sugars. Pay attention to what you eat for dinner and to when you eat dinner. What works for me is eating dinner between 6 and 7 p.m., which is approximately 3 to 4 hours before I go to bed. And I try to keep the dinner light without too much calories from fat. My preferred options are chicken and zucchini meatballs, chicken breast with a big portion of salad, and different variations of vegetable soups. I realized that these meals don't spike my blood sugar very much, and most importantly, they keep my blood sugar stable during the time when I go to bed. Our goal today is to keep our blood sugar stable in the ideal range over the whole night, and the best way to get there, surprise surprise, is to start well, to already go to bed with stable blood sugars in that ideal range. And you can achieve that by eating a light dinner. By the way, the ideal blood glucose range for a healthy person during the night is somewhere between 80 and 120 milligrams per deciliter. This is where you ideally want to be. For diabetics, the generally acceptable range is a bit wider, between 70 and 180 milligrams per deciliter. But you should always try to be even better and check with your doctor really what is the recommended range for you and what you should be shooting for. Now, I mentioned a few meals that I like to eat, but I know that different diabetics have different preferences when it comes to what they put on their plate. And that's okay. Just keep in mind you absolutely need to understand how what you put on your plate or what drink you have impact your blood sugar. The reason why I recommend eating dinner 3 to 4 hours before going to bed is that most meal, as well as the insulin your body produces or you inject to cover those meals, will have the most effect on the blood sugar levels during those 3 to 4 hours after you eat them. And if you see your blood sugar spiking right after you go to bed or in the first half of the night even, your dinner might very well be the problem. Remember, you want to start the night with stable blood sugars in the optimal range. Tip number 3, focus on improving insulin sensitivity. Natural. This point is especially important when you see your blood sugar spiking gradually throughout the night. And we're not talking about medication yet here. We will cover that in a minute because there are diabetics who are insulin dependent and who need medication. But now we're thinking natural ways how to improve insulin sensitivity. And there are 2 ways everyone can do it, no matter what type of diabetes you have. I'm sure you know these 2 things, but let me repeat them to you because I think they are so important to not only your diabetes, but also to your overall health. 1, avoid saturated fats and processed foods. I stayed completely away from processed foods and I ate literally no saturated fats in the last 2 weeks before filming this video. And the results I'm seeing already now are pretty amazing. I'm a type 1 diabetic. My body doesn't produce insulin at all. But over the past 2 weeks, sticking to healthy diet, I was able to reduce the amount of insulin I need to take by 15%. So I improved my insulin sensitivity by 15%. I didn't make any other changes to my lifestyle or the number of calories I eat. So the improvement in the insulin sensitivity can be directly attributed to eating healthier. Number 2, get your body moving. If you bring that heart rate up 3 to 4 times a week, you will become more insulin sensitive. It doesn't matter what kind of exercise you do. In general, there are 2 kinds of physical activity. Aerobic activity like hiking, jogging, or swimming, which will bring your blood sugars down instantly. And then there are anaerobic activities where you bring your heart rate up even higher for short periods of time, like fast sprints or high intensity interval training. And these might bring your immediate blood sugars a little bit higher, but they will reduce your blood glucose a few hours or several hours after such training. But it doesn't matter what kind of activity you do. Just pick one that you like and stay consistent. That's how you improve insulin sensitivity, which will help you tremendously in reducing those elevated nighttime blood sugars. Tip number 4, fine-tune that long-lasting insulin, aka basal insulin. This is another key to optimal nighttime blood sugars in the ideal range for those insulin-dependent diabetics. And I'm not talking about fast-acting insulin here, because if you follow tip 2 and eat your dinner 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, take a rapid-acting insulin with your
or dinner, it should not have much impact on your nighttime blood sugars. By the time you go to bed, your fast-acting insulin will play a minimal role. If after implementing all the previous tips you still see your blood sugar rising during the night, the issue might very well be your basal insulin, especially if the spike always occurs at a similar time. And if that's the case, you might need to talk to your doctor and adjust the amount of long-lasting insulin that you take, or adjust the time when you inject that long-lasting insulin. This is a bit easier to fix when you are on an insulin pump, because you can simply tell the pump to give you more insulin during that specific time. Guys, if you are insulin dependent, please implement these tips step by step. Don't overdo it. Don't do too much at the same time. Monitor your progress with the continuous glucose monitors or frequent finger pricking, and consult your doctor. You might see tremendous effects, especially after you avoid saturated fats and processed foods and start being more active. And once that happens, you might need to reduce the amount of medication you are taking. Otherwise, you might soon have a problem with the exact opposite, nighttime hypoglycemia, because your blood sugar will just be too low.
The thing is, you will never be 100% successful with lowering blood sugars if you don't eat the right foods. And this all starts with shopping for groceries. And I put together a complete diabetes shopping guide, which will take your blood sugar game to the next level. So click here and watch the shopping guide next. I will see you there. Thanks for watching. Ciao.